Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our final breakout session of our Friday workshops. This is Heal the Hurt, the Arts as a Path to Healing. Before I introduce our speaker, I would like to take the opportunity to thank some important people. First of all, I would like to thank our corporate sponsors who have made this year's annual conference possible through their generous gifts. That includes Ribera Law Firm, Lamoth Law Firm, and MK Safety Net. In addition, I'd like to have the opportunity to thank our longtime supporter, Mitch Garabedian, who has, through great generosity, provided us with a $10,000 matching gift so we can, again, fund this year's annual convention. I have, on behalf of SNAP, the great pleasure to introduce Mary Dispenza to our 2021 annual conference. Not only is Mary a good personal friend of mine, but Mary Dispenza is a survivor of priest and nun abuse. She cherishes the opportunity to connect with survivors as a SNAP leader for those abused by nuns and clergy. Mary is a member of the LGBTQIA Advisory Board to the Bellevue, Washington Police Department. Mary is a writer, speaker, and author of the award-winning book, Split, A Child, a Priest, and the Catholic Church. Mary believes that the arts are a pathway to healing and understanding, and as she often says, when words failed me, art stepped in and became my voice. Mary, welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for choosing this session, Heal the Hurt, the Arts as a Pathway to Healing. Yes, I'm Mary Dispenza, and yes, I'm a survivor, like so many. None of us became a survivor overnight. It was hard work. It takes hard work. And if it weren't for people loving us, like our family, friends, and organizations like SNAP to support us with resources, such as today, and in my case, the arts, I'm not so sure I would have survived. Today, I want to tell you my story of how art saved me when nothing else could, and can help you too on your healing journey. Stories have the power to heal us. Stories tell the truth. I believe that stories are the greatest gifts we can give each other. This will be my first time and an honor to tell and share my story, my healing story, through photography, painting, and art. Maybe you can share a little later about the art or creative process that has helped you on your healing path. It is my hope that at the end of this hour together, you are inspired to find, if you haven't already, a creative endeavor like sketching, poetry, painting, collage making, dancing, singing, knitting, sewing, writing, sculpting, gardening, cooking, any creative activity that takes you out and away from being under that very dark, heavy, and sad cloud that can hang over us from time to time. So with arts, I have found that I can step from under that cloud and reach a level of connection, safety, peace, and understanding. I'm so fortunate to have Patrick Price, the fundraiser and development coordinator of SNAP, to moderate our session and keep us on track. Patrick, please tell us about our Q&A times coming up soon.
Good afternoon, folks. There will be two sessions of Q&A. one midway through Mary's presentation and one at the end. I would kindly ask that if you have a comment or an insight or a question, that you please type that into the Q&A box that you find at the bottom of your screen. And we will take the questions at each of these sessions when appropriate. Thank you much.
Let's begin with some good reasons backed by research that answers the question, why is art a good practice to have in our lives? Well, very simply put, art makes everything better. At least it has for me. Here are some of the ways. Art reduces stress and anxiety. It improves the connections in our brain. It helps us get out of sadness. It helps us focus. It gets us in the flow, and it connects our body, mind, and gives us hope for the future. What a deal, right? And it doesn't cost anything. With that, I'd like to begin by telling you some of my story of how dancing, painting, and photography have been a pivotal point in my healing and wellness. Here's where my story begins. I grew up in East Los Angeles, a tough place to live in the 50s and the 60s. It was the time of riots, drugs, pedal pushers, hoop skirts, and the bop, the dancing rage in my neighborhood. They were also the years that clergy abuse was rampant and took thousands of children's lives away from the joy of childhood, family, and friends that should have been theirs. I was one of those thousands of children raped by the parish priest at age 7. I went deep inside, talked less, and lived 2 lives, one on the inside and one on the outside. A major disconnect and split began between my body and mind. I was a very lucky kid, though, to find connection and a peaceful place in painting, drawing, and dancing. When I had no words, art became my voice. Often, I think of Maya Angelou, who stopped speaking at age 8 because she felt responsible for the death of her abuser. Years later, Maya found her voice in the creative art of writing and poetry. I remember her poem, I Rise. It's always been my favorite. I found freedom on the dance floor. We danced the summers away in my friend Jimmy's garage. His dad even arranged to get us tickets for the Al Jarvis Champion Dance program on TV. Some of you are too young to remember this, or maybe too old to remember. These 3, painting, drawing, and dancing, held me together during my school days. After high school, I entered the convent in 1958, and I remained for 15 years. During that time, art became more of an expression for the superior, like making carved spiritual bouquets for the pastor's birthday, or doing creative tasks that teaching and the classroom asked of me. There was no more dancing the night away, no more bop or shake, rattle, and roll, no photography, and no art that was really mine. Still, it was a help to me because any time I spent in a creative process was time not spent under a gray cloud of sadness. These drawings of myself in my habit were startling to me and gave me an understanding of how invisible I was as a nun. In each Drawing, I have no face, only my hands can be seen. I realized that for 15 years, my body remained under layers of cloth. I was a woman of the cloth with even less awareness of my body than before. Time went on, and it was 1973. I was 33 when I left my religious community and continued as a lay principal in Catholic schools. That is when the teachers and students gave me my first Canon DSLR camera, and I haven't stopped taking pictures since. I continued to paint. Dancing got left behind. I had yet to face the abuse. It stayed locked in my body and brain where memories are stored. It would be 1992, at the age of 52, when I had enough courage to face for the first time my abuse and the abuser, the notorious Father George Neville Rucker of the Diocese of Los Angeles, California. Finally, through art, I did uncover some feelings. I drew the feelings and Father Rucker out of me the best that I could, literally and figuratively. What follows are 4 slides that were very, very helpful in connecting feelings and memories to my childhood abuse and helped me understand what a terrible, terrible crime it was and is now for a child to be raped, especially when the rapist is a priest who is supposedly next to God and committed to live a life of celibacy, goodness, and pure love. I continued to draw the abuse, the places and scenes the way I and little Mary remembered. This is a picture of little Mary washing her hands in the little bathroom at the back of the auditorium where I was sexually violated and raped. Washing, washing, washing until I am on the floor of the small bathroom. I thought that I must have thought I was dirty and that water would cleanse me. It reminds me that I left little Mary on the bathroom floor that day, and it would be years before I would return and pick her up. And I did. I must have felt shame too. Every survivor knows shame, the unworthiness that comes from feeling we are bad, dirty, or should have known better. This picture is called Detached. This is little Mary. After she washed, she went looking for her mom. Mom drove the bus and worked in the rectory, a perfect arrangement for grooming, don't you think? Mom was taking a break and visiting the lunchroom ladies in the kitchen connected to the auditorium. Ironically, Mom was so close, yet she didn't know. I went to her. I felt far from her. I saw in my drawing little Mary, separate and detached. The split and disconnect began. The next 2 slides are difficult to see, but they were very, very helpful drawings on my path to healing and gaining feelings and understanding of what had happened. I put the trigger warning here because the graphics, the drawings show graphically what I could not speak, and they were a path to my healing the hurt. So please turn off your screen if you would rather not see. After I drew this picture, Invasion, again, I thought how little I was. It was only in drawing did I see how little I was. I was being invaded in this picture, held captive, caught, his arms too strong for me. I realized why I was so uncomfortable sitting on someone's lap, like little kids do with their dads and moms. And as teens, when we piled into cars after a game, sat on laps, mostly boys' laps, and then we went to get burgers and fries. It was this picture that helped me see the impact in so many ways. I saw me, little me, also having a nightmare of a first sexual experience, devoid of intimacy, contributing to my challenges in intimacy, one of my greatest desires and needs. This next slide, abandonment, makes me sad. I saw me so small again, just a little girl used and abused for the priest's pleasure. I'm so little in the lower right-hand corner that I almost seem invisible. I felt the priest looming over me like a giant with such power over me. I saw in this body his limp and relaxed self, while I'm alone, frozen, abandoned, scared, locked now inside for over half a lifetime. I remember my own words from my memoir, and he, the priest, walked out of the auditorium and into the light while I remained in darkness. I think we'll take a pause and a breath. And now Patrick is going to lead us in our Q&A.
So Mary, the first issue comes from Luke, who has been sexually abused many years ago as a teenager, and indicates that part of his creative writing process is that of poetry. And as he's gone through these many years, the poems he has written, he sees a lot of shame, a lot of sense of guilt, a lot of sorrow, much anger, and isolation, many of the things that you mentioned. However, he has not shared his poems with anyone. Does that mean Luke lacks courage?
Oh no! First of all, Luke, I'm really sorry for your abuse and the way you were hurt, and I also congratulate you for using poetry and getting out some of that pain and freeing yourself as you can. And I think, number one, that was a very brave and courageous act. And there's no shame in not sharing. I always believe that when we're ready, we do, and we will. And you'll find great freedom in that. And you know, you're going to find that you're not alone. And there are others having stories similar to yours, and your story will become and your poetry will become a great help. So I say pay attention to your heart. You'll know when it's time, and you'll be brave enough to do it.
The second is from Ellen. Ellen, from what she says here, grew up on a farm outside of Minnesota and has always been attracted to nature. And she has a great love of gardening and a great love of cooking. And she finds that her connection to nature is very relaxing, very soul soothing. Um, Her question is this enough?
Well, I I think again, Ellen will know the answer. Um, we're really the only ones that know when something is enough. And I I think again, it's so great to garden and do what gives you joy. And I believe it's a way that you go to the light and you go to love. Um, I find in my own life that I do go to other things besides my photography, art, and dancing, and that they are, as I said earlier, any time spent away in a creative experience, it keeps us out of the sadness, anger. It brings us joy and it brings us happiness. So, um, same answer as before. You'll know if it's enough, and you pay attention to your heart. And if there's something else you want to introduce into your life, go for it. Life is short, and whatever brings us joy, no harm in adding it.
And Claire asked specifically of you, Mary, what do you do with your anger?
Well, Claire, thank you. That's a really good question. Uh, Sometimes I say I don't do anger very well, and probably I do. That's a sure sign that I probably do. But I I was looking back at some of my work to uh, connect to today, and I found something I did a long time ago called My Angry Way of the Cross. And it's my own Stations of the Cross. And it is so angry. Station 1, Station 2, Station 3. I castigated everybody, the church, where I worked and got fired, anybody, everybody. And that was a great big help. But I guess today in the present, what do I do? Well, I talk to myself. Sometimes I just say, Mary, you don't need to get so angry. You need to calm down. And if I really wanted to get out of anger, I would go, I would take a break. I would go draw. I would take a walk. I would do one of these creative experiences, and that would help mitigate my anger. And along with that, anger is a positive energy, or it can be a positive energy that moves us to action. And I think that that is the real challenge, not to let it eat us up inside, but to channel it into action. And I believe I've done that with a lot of my anger. I found things that matter to me, and I do them. And I can't be angry when I'm reaching out in either creative experiences or in making a difference as I can. So that's a really good question, is all I have to add. And it's really worth a continued conversation.
And here's more an insight, Mary, from an anonymous attendee who has sent this statement. I've been journaling, writing poetry, and drawing since I was raped by my minister at the age of 14 in 1976. I have filed a police report last year and a complaint with the Attorney General 2 years ago. If there is a civil lawsuit, will they want to look at and want copies of all my journals, poetry, and drawings? I would rather not share it with the attorneys. I've shared them with my therapist.
And I'm sorry, is the question whether or not to share with the attorneys?
I guess the question is will they want to look at the journals, poetry, and drawings?
Well, having gone through a case myself, I would say they would like to, because that's a very supportive piece for you, in that most likely some of your work is traumatic. And as we've been saying, sometimes words just don't do it. And I'm wondering, I'm sorry, I missed your name.
There is no name. It's anonymous.
Oh, well, Anonymous, would you like to answer a question I have?
Maybe you should pose the question.
The question is, would it be shame that would be keeping you from wanting to do that?
We will wait till the next session and hopefully there will be a response at that. So Mary, I will close here and we'll pick up with the next comments and insights at the end of the session.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks to those of you who asked a question or gave a comment. We all learned from the sharing we just had. And thanks to those who listened, both our gift. There'll be more time at the end of this presentation for another Q&A. And maybe at that time, you might share an art in your life and how it has helped you. Following our photos and paintings from the now time in my life, you'll notice a stark contrast from the black and white, the absence of color, to a change to brilliant, joyful, happy, glorious color. It was a long journey for me from there to here, but I can assure you that it's worth it and things get better. Each photo and painting speak to me now of life, love, healing, connection, happiness, intimacy, and hope for a better future. This photo is called Sunrise. It was taken on a very early morning when I was writing my memoir. There's a line from a church song that goes like this: "Then comes the morning, yesterday's sorrows are gone." This photo of sunrise always reminds me that I have another chance and opportunity at life and love. Sunrise touches my soul and speaks to me of God and my spiritual journey to serenity and peace. This photo of the bird of paradise is a beautiful reminder of how the darkness in our lives frames the beauty, how the darkness in my life frames my beauty. There's so much that makes this photo among my favorites: the composition, balance, vibrant color, the light shining through, the darkness framing it, and the intimacy I feel when I look into it. In a crazy kind of way, the darkness had its place in bringing me here today with you, and I like that. This painting is called Fly Free. There came a time for me to fly free, not to be rooted or grounded like a punishment in a past that hurt me and wasn't my fault. It was time to move to the present and to look to the future. I know it's not easy, but it is doable and it does get better. Like this unique bird, when I'm flying free, I have power. We have power over that which can hold us in bondage. This painting is called Fire Dancer. She is dancing the tango, one of my favorite dances. When I was a teenager, as I mentioned before, dancing was always the closest I could get to a body-mind connection. I lost the opportunity in the convent. It took me until 2007, at age 67, to say to myself, Mary, you love dancing. Why are you not dancing? That day, I started to dance, and 14 years later, I am still dancing. Dancing helped me uncover from the shame of rape and sexual violation. It reminded me that my body is beautiful, as is yours, and I need not stay under wraps anymore. Dance brings me such joy, movement, grace, and a deep connection to my body, mind, and soul, and to friends and community. Ah, my great blue heron friend. On the left, teaching me patience, stillness, and that things can take time, and that sometimes we don't get the catch, not on the first time, and sometimes not on the second. And our option is to not make the catch or to just keep trying. And I believe if we try again, eventually we will get the catch. And the photograph on the heron on the right, I treasure deeply. It's a photo of a heron bathing, which I have never seen since I took that photo. The heron is cleansing herself like little Mary and letting me stand close as if she knew we were both safe now. This is my most recent painting. It's called We Rise. It came out of the hurt I was feeling for my brown and Black brothers and sisters who have suffered racism and were disproportionately impacted by the COVID virus. I was feeling powerless, a very terrible feeling that most of us are familiar with. So I did what I always do. I began to paint it out. I thought of the Catholic Church and the virus of clergy abuse eating away at my very soul, and no vaccine. I am the white person lost in a sea of browns. At the bottom of the painting, I'm lost, confused, not knowing quite what to do, and knowing I can't hide. My color won't let me. And yet I am connected to, I can raise my fists in power and in love, and I can say, we rise. This is the painting I'm working on now. It's a painting to honor my Native American brothers, sisters, and children who were also and are disproportionately affected by the virus. Stories are appearing in the media about the terrible abuse, torture, and secret burial of children in Indian residential schools. The tragedy of lost children touched me deeply. That's why I had to paint it out. Made me think of the many survivors we have lost to death and suicide, and the thousands of survivor stories that remain locked away in the secret files, as if we don't count. The Catholic Church has its own secret burial grounds to uncover and set the captives free. Ah, sunset. Photos of a sunset. Reminds me that after the sun goes down, we can count on a new day. Sometimes it's even difficult to know if an end is a beginning or a beginning an end. We'll be moving now into our last sharing. And you have been such great listeners. Now I'd love to listen to you again, your voice, your insights, and how the arts may be helping you heal. Patrick, do you want to lead us in our last Q&A?
Absolutely. Most of these are insights, Mary, but hey, that's great because it gives us an opportunity to look within and look without.
Yeah.
From Sarah, she says, thank you for your powerful reflections, Mary. Your comments on anger make me think of this quote. Hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are Anger and Courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that they do not remain as they are.
Sarah, thank you. That's what I've been hoping for, some of your wisdom. And I like that. There's another story similar about two wolves, and they're fighting with one another, and the Indian chief's grandkids say, well, which one will win? And one was anger and one was charity. And the wise old Indian chief says to his grandkids, the one you feed.
The next comes from a mutual friend of ours, Mary PK. I am an artist in kindergarten. My art looks like the art of a kindergarten child. I think my art reflects the child who never had a voice. Today I write as art. I use photography and crayons as a way to balance my writing, which can be at times very hard to write and harder to read. Self-judgment jumps in without invitation. My choice would be to have a supportive family on my healing journey. So I've made my own family. I've adopted words, crayons, and colored pencils.
Thank you, PK. It certainly shows in what you've just shared with us, how words, especially how you work magic with words. It was very beautiful. Well, I think little PK is in your art sometimes. And what a wonderful thing. She deserves a right to scribble and color. And I've seen pieces of yours that are grown-up PK. And so it's all important and it's all beautiful. And remember that book, Everything I Learned in Kindergarten. So you learned a lot in kindergarten, and little PK wants to be sure you get it. Thanks for sharing that.
From Deb is this question. How do you give yourself time to do art? I focus on others more than myself.
Yeah, another good question. It's too easy to say make time, but there is some truth to it. I know in my head all the things we say, like if it's important, you'll do it. And if you really love it, you'll do it. And then there is life. When I'm working on something, and it isn't every day that I paint, but when I do, and I have the drive to get it done, I do then carve out a little time to do that which is important to me. But you're bringing up another challenge of life, the balance, the balance we have to do. between our friends, between our reach out programs, between the arts and our own needs. I try in the morning. I think your question is taking me to self-care. There are some things that I really am faithful to. One is my morning meditation time. And after that, my exercise, because they're really important to me. And so deciding what's important, really important, and then committing to doing that, it's the only way it would happen. For example, when I wrote my memoir, the only way I could get it finished was a committed time every day. So for 2 hours every day, I wrote. So the first thing you have to answer is this really important to me? Do I really want to do it? And I hope it is, because remember, again, with creative experiences, they have so much positive impact on you that you have more energy to do some of those things that you're engaged in. Thanks.
And here's another comment from another Mary. She says, I heard a quote from Mark Nepo, I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, passed on through Oprah Winfrey. The pain was necessary to know the truth, but we don't have to keep the pain alive in order to keep the truth alive.
Yeah, that's really true and beautiful. Thank you.
Nancy shares, thank you for sharing the pics of you as so little. I was 7, very little, but seeing your pictures made me understand the reality of how little I was.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I just saw for the first time. Just a little tiny girl. And it was an example of only through the drawings could I really grasp what a little child some of us were when we were raped, and the enormity of the adult. In my drawings, I could see the giant of a priest, the power, the ability to harm and hurt. So I agree with what you've said. Thank you.
He asked the question, where can poetry about clergy abuse be shared? Are there journals or other avenues?
Well, there is a group that shares the arts, and poetry is one of their branches, but I don't recall the name right now. If you leave your email or something, if that's possible, I can look that up for you. But poetry, as I said earlier, I've done different creative experiences. For example, when I feel sad, or when working through my own abuse, I wrote poetry. I have about 6 poems that are quite graphic, and they were a help to me too, a big help. And I know many of you, including Patrick Price, he's a poet. And that the avenue of poetry is such a beautiful one to put into words and rhyme and all the rest. So I encourage you to keep writing your poems, and I encourage you to share them. I think there are levels in sharing, just like coming out. At first you're private, and then you begin just to tell those in your families of choice or your family of origin. And then you make a decision, do you want to go public or not? And you don't have to. But with your poems, same thing. You've written them, and I'm so happy to hear that you want to give them to the world and to other survivors. So if I can find some avenues, I would like to get them to you. Thank you.
I think we'll be ready to close here, folks. I would say if any of you have more questions or insights as a staff member of SNAP, please feel free to send me those. I'll put my email address in the chat box, and I can forward them on to Mary, or Mary can put her own email address in the chat box as well, so that we can follow up, because I know sometimes it takes time to process what you've heard and what's been shared before a question comes up. So you're always welcome to do that.
And
In addition, I want to remind everyone that I would say maybe in 20 to 30 minutes, we will have a roundtable to continue this discussion for Heal the Hurt. And feel free to join us. Mary and I will be there, but give us a little time to set it up, and we will see you there. Mary, I'll let you conclude.
thank you, Patrick, for doing a great job as moderator. And thanks to each of you for being with me today. And a great big thank you to Zach and those behind the scenes, and to SNAP for making such resources as this conference available to everyone. I leave you with 4 closing thoughts. Any time spent in a creative endeavor of our choice is generally time away from and